Good morning, everyone. This is a meeting of the Howard County Delegation, and we are thrilled this morning to be joined by Representative John Sarbanes. He's going to be giving us a briefing on federal issues, and hopefully we'll have some time for question and answers. Congressman Sarbanes, take it away. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Delegate Feldmark. Appreciate the opportunity to visit with you as I do each General Assembly session, so we can sort of trade perspectives on what's happening in our respective legislative bodies. So it's great to be with you and with Howard County residents today. First of all, let me thank Vicky Garcia, who's my outreach person, who's on the call today, who I know interacts with many of your offices on a daily basis. She is continuing to do that as I finish out the current term. I also want to recognize that the General Assembly members, all of you, are facing your own set of challenges. It seems like wherever laws are made and budgets are crafted these days, there are great challenges facing those who are wrestling with the issues, and certainly Maryland has those this year, and there's a lot on your plate. And so I want to thank you for what you're doing, not just for Howard County, but for the state of Maryland. It's very, very much appreciated, as is the partnership between my office and all of your offices as well. Certainly the challenges around the deficit in the state transportation funding basket is something that you're wrestling with, and every jurisdiction in Maryland is facing. So we know that that's something that's being looked at. Just to let you know, in terms of the federal ability to step in and assist with that, it's relatively limited, unfortunately. So the gaps that have been identified there are ones that are going to have to cause a scramble within the state budget, as you know. But I do want to say that the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that we passed a couple of years ago continues to push out significant funding to the states and through the states to localities. An example in Howard County's case is rehabilitating, renovating a lot of these bridges in the county. I know the county executive announced in January about $6 million of awards coming from that Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that will flow to Howard County and assist with that kind of infrastructure improvement. So there are ways that the federal dollars will continue to flow in to support key investments in the state, and that's just one of a number of things that we've done at the federal level, which represent important investments. The Inflation Reduction Act being another one, in terms of particularly stepping up behind energy infrastructure investments. So that's been absolutely critical. The CHIPS and Science Act, which is bringing really critical funding across the country and into places like Howard County as well. So those investments will continue to flow over a significant period of time. I know that the Maryland Blueprint, we want to keep that strong, and you all as well are addressing that. And I know that there's some fiscal pressures around maintaining that commitment. Howard County is among the jurisdictions that are wrestling with funding when it comes to the public school system. So these are all things that are being dealt with locally in Howard County. Obviously, at the state level, you're doing what you can to wrap your arms around the county and provide critical supports, and every chance we get at the federal delegation level to be supportive and make sure investments are coming in a way that strengthens the county. Certainly our delegation is committed to that. Let me just mention a couple of sort of the key Democratic priorities that we are continuing to push in Washington. And frankly, while I think the leadership for these things is coming out of the Democratic corner, they're not projects or investments or areas of focus that benefit just one part of the political spectrum. They're meant to lift up communities across the board, wherever people live, whatever their political perspective might be. As I mentioned, we want to maintain the investments, the focus on some of these wins from the 117th Congress, whether it's the Investment in Infrastructure and Jobs Act, the IRA, significant commitments we made in the FY 2023 budget. We want to continue to strengthen our democracy. I'm leading again on the key bills at the federal level that would ensure ballot access, would address partisan gerrymandering, which would push back on the influence of money in our system. And let me stop on that last one for a minute, because we do see that the U.S. economy is strong. We see that the inflation that families were contending with over the last 2 or 3 years is come down fairly significantly. But we also know that, when people go to the supermarket or when they go to fill up their tanks, it's still a stretch for them. And that's causing a lot of pain out there in the economy, and we need to address that. But there's increasing evidence that you can trace some of this sticky inflation back to the behavior of the corporate sector in America. And there seems to be, I'll just call it corporate greed at work here, where you have those with influence and the ability to kind of lean on the scales when it comes to the way things operate in our politics and our governing, to put their priorities first. And I think big corporations, frankly, aren't being good team members in this moment a lot of the time. Obviously, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but when you look at certainly the way things operate in Washington, there's too much influence there, and money is being used to affect public policy, and it's right for the public to get angry and frustrated by that. So we have to address that as well. We want to keep programs like Medicare and Social Security as strong as we possibly can. We want to pass at the federal level, if we can get back to numbers that allow us to do it, legislation that will protect and defend reproductive health care across this country. And there's many other basic rights that are being enforced and protected in some states in this country, but not in others. Maryland certainly, I think, is one where we feel well protected in terms of the efforts that our lawmakers take. But there are places otherwise in the country where those rights are at risk, and you need federal legislation to set a standard that will protect those things everywhere in this country. Right now, as you know, we are trying to get our budget landed, and I sort of buried the headline here, which is at the end of this week, potentially there could be a shutdown if we don't get House and Senate negotiators on both sides of the aisle to agree on a package and get it either in place by the end of the week, or a additional short-term continuing resolution to give more time to get something in place. Unfortunately, we continue to see a small group of extreme lawmakers in the Republican conference who are prepared to shut down the government in order to get some very draconian policy riders into the bills, the budget bills, or extreme draconian cuts into the bills. They do not represent the majority of people in the House of Representatives, I can tell you, certainly not the Democrats. And they don't represent most of the Republicans. But they have particular leverage, outsized leverage over the process, because the margins now are so thin between the Republicans and the Democrats. And so they can sort of exert this pressure over their own leadership and Speaker Mike Johnson. To be candid, he's going to have to make a decision in the next few days. Is he going to put those extremist interests first, or is he going to put the country, the budget, a consensus approach first in terms of what needs to be done? And I hope that he will go with the latter, even if that potentially could imperil his speakership. it remains to be seen if we do head into shutdown territory. Let me just say that our office will be putting on the website at that time some very clear guidelines as to what the implications of that are for our constituents and your constituents. So we will be a resource and we'll continue to work through a shutdown. My staff will be available for casework and outreach and so forth under the structure that we've put together. The last thing I do want to mention, and then I'll close out with a couple other things, but the last thing when it comes to sort of key priorities that we're pursuing right now, in addition to the budget, as you very much know from the news of the day, we're trying to get a supplemental bill through that would provide critical assistance to Ukraine, to Israel, humanitarian assistance that can go in to Gaza and assist with the civilian impact there, which has been tragic, assistance to some other security interests we have around the world. The Senate passed such a bill a couple of weeks ago. It's a pretty good bill. I'd like to see Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, put it on the House floor. So far, he has resisted that, insisting that there need to be changes to the border policy. I agree that we need to address the border policy, but we went through that exercise on the Senate side, and the Republicans backed off of that finally, and it got pulled out of the bill. So the fact that now Johnson is using that as a way of blocking this bill on the House side seems a little bit disingenuous, but we're going to continue to push for that. We know that our interest when it comes to supporting Ukraine, for example, couldn't be any more clear. The fact of the matter is that we would be spending a lot more money if Russia was right on the border with NATO having defeated Ukraine than we would be spending under the current design of the situation. So this is something front and center. I would say those two things: getting the budget done, obviously, for 2024, and getting this supplemental support and resources when it comes to Ukraine, Israel, humanitarian assistance, and so forth. And then lastly, just wanted to mention a couple of things that we have gotten done in this Congress, because it's not a long list, unfortunately, but among them, we did pass a tax bill last month. It was a bipartisan deal. Among the things that it achieved was expanding the child tax credit between 2023 and 2025. This would benefit over 15 million children, so a very important step that was taken. And also some tax incentives and credits that can boost the number of affordable housing units across the country by about 200,000. We know, even in places like Howard County, there is a dire housing crisis in this country. It's really of tremendous proportion, and it's affecting how we make public policy everywhere. So the federal government is going to have to be in that partnership with states and localities. We have to do much more than what I just mentioned. But I think you're beginning to see a collective perspective now in Washington that this has got to be right at the top of the list of national priorities. And so we'll be continuing to work on things like that. We did get the National Defense Authorization Act passed, which brings a 5.2% pay raise to our troops. It invests in historically Black colleges and universities. It's got some efforts to clean up these PFAS chemicals included within it, a number of projects at Fort Meade that are funded through that as well. And then on the appropriations front, well, a couple other things. We did take some steps. Our delegation helped lead an effort to get the IRS to give taxpayers affected by the problems at the 529 program in Maryland, the Maryland Prepaid College Trust, a little extra time in terms of rollover. So that's important. And if you need more information about that, by all means, let us know. And then we are working on the Farm Bill, which I know is of consequence for Western Howard County. We're hoping to get that done. Again, everything is contentious, but I think people on both sides of the aisle in leadership want to see that happen. So that's on the agenda coming up soon as well. In terms of appropriation opportunities, those are all up in the air because of the budget stance, but I did want to let you know that we've put in requests around the Ranley Court redevelopment, the Dobbin Road shared use pathway, Route 29 extended flash bus service between Columbia and Burtonsville. And then, of course, the North Tunnel project. And I just want to end with the observation that that's been an all hands on deck effort. I want to congratulate the state delegation for supporting that. Obviously, County Executive Ball and his team and the council. We're trying to assist there if we can with some dollars flowing, if we can get them through the appropriations process. It's not a big amount compared to the overall cost of the project, but I think it does represent the team approach. And I know that the groundbreaking on the extended North Tunnel is set for June. So it's very exciting that that's moving forward. I know work has begun on Main Street in terms of some of the demolition that needs to happen. So let me close, Delegate Feldmark, by again thanking you for the great work that you're doing. Happy to answer any questions. Very proud of the association that I've had and the collaboration with members of the Howard County delegation over these many years. Continue the great work that you're doing on behalf of all our constituents.
Well, thank you, Congressman, and thank you for your years of service, not only to Howard County, but to our country. Really appreciate the partnership we've had, and I do want to also from our end celebrate Vicky Garcia and the tremendous work she does with all of our offices working together to help our constituents. She is a tremendous asset to the Howard County community. So thank you. And she's hiding today with her camera off, but that's how she rolls behind the scenes, just making things happen. So any questions for Congressman Sarbanes? I see Delegate Hill has your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Congressman Sarbanes, really thank you for just, outstanding leadership and partnership. It's really been a privilege and a pleasure to work with you, both here in Howard County and previously in Baltimore County. And I have to leave, so I appreciate the chair allowing me to get a question in. So this is a little bit of projection I'm asking you to do, but the Trump tax breaks for the wealthy, of course, are permanent, but the ones for the middle class are scheduled to expire. What do you think Congress is going to do? There's so many other things going on. Has there been any discussion at all, any attention being paid at all going forward about addressing that problem? Or is it completely rolling over to the next Congress?
I would say the latter. I mean, with these other things that are front and center, frankly, consuming our attention and our focus every single day, going back in to revise tax policy is not at the top of the list right now. As you know, large overhauls of the tax code are very, very difficult to achieve. They happen once every 20 or 30 years. Unfortunately, the last major one that happened was a giveaway. I think 83% of the benefits of that went to the highest income individuals and corporations in our country. And that was a giveaway in my view. That's why I opposed it. Obviously, if you're going to have tax relief, you want it to be targeted and maintained with respect to middle class taxpayers. So your point is very well taken. I think, to be very honest, that is the kind of effort that's going to depend on getting House leadership back in the hands of the Democrats, maintaining that leadership on the Senate side and having a Democratic president that would sign an overhaul and as a part of a team lead that effort. So I think it is something that we have to look towards the next Congress for, and it's why elections matter, frankly. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next up, Delegate Tarasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have a couple questions. So I don't know if you want me to ask one and then let other people answer and then cycle back in. I'm happy to
Sure, let's go
re-raise
one
my
at a
hand.
time.
Okay, so thank you, Congressman, for your tremendous partnership as well and just outstanding representation. I just wanted to go back to one of the things you said about the sticky inflation and the whole concept of sort of what it's tied to. Do you have any suggestions on how to talk about that with constituents? Because it seems like even if we know intellectually what's going on,
Yeah.
as you said, it's going to be really hard to have that, to convince anybody of that in a soundbite.
Well, I mean, I think the way to talk to constituents about it is to articulate what at least I view as a legitimate culprit here, or a legitimate villain in the story. And that is the fact that when you look at the kinds of costs that people wrestle with, you have big industries and big corporations which are profiting, grossly profiting, at a time when the average person is struggling to meet a household budget. So if you're talking about the cost of medication, we know that the pharmaceutical industry continues to make out like bandits. That's not right. That's not fair. That's why I support negotiating the price of drugs through Medicare with that industry. But we need to do more because obviously people are being affected who aren't Medicare recipients, who are getting hit by those very, very high costs. So we have to take on that industry in a stronger way. And we know that they use lobbyists and money and campaign contributions to try to influence policy. If you look at the oil and gas industry, yes, we knew there was some shocks internationally, globally, to the oil market that warranted increases at the pump. But the thing is, when those shocks go away, the prices don't come down as fast as they went up. And that's because the oil and gas industry has figured out how to kind of achieve this float, ensuring that they make huge profits on a quarterly basis, which they continue to do. So you got to take on the oil and gas industry, which frankly the president has attempted to do, Congress has attempted to do, but it's being blocked by members of Congress who frankly I think are too beholden to those industries for certain things. So that's a difficult thing. We now are seeing increasing evidence when it comes to the cost of products in the supermarket, whether it's this shrinkflation, which the president was talking about the other day, which is, okay, maybe you don't raise the prices more, but you start shrinking the packaging. So people are getting less food. That's just not right. And I think that the average person gets this. They know that there are these large forces at work who are very profitable, know how to manipulate this system, and are doing it at the expense of the average working person out there. And I think we just articulate that, but then match it by saying, we want to address it. We want to bring more transparency to what's happening in terms of influence peddling by those big industries and corporations, and make sure that they're behaving in a way that's fair to the average person and fair to the American economy. Because the fact of the matter is that it's a form of corruption. It's corrupting our economy when those big interests use money to achieve their own ends instead of helping the country grow in a productive way. So that's how I talk about it. And what's interesting is if you articulate that to any audience, you get heads nodding because people know this. They're smart. They understand what's going on out there, and they want it to stop. And I think, frankly, this is one reason I support President Biden, is I think he's much better prepared and much more interested in addressing those interests than former President Trump is. Just look back at who was put in charge of all the agencies. They were lobbyists for those industries that were supposed to be getting regulated. So that's not a formula for success. And again, the arguments I'm making aren't arguments that I'm making for the benefit of Democrats. This is for Democrats, Republicans, independents, any family out there that's trying to make ends meet. They need to know that we're fighting on their behalf against special interests that have a different agenda.
Thank you. Senator Lamb.
Yeah, thank you. I just want, on behalf of the Senate delegation, as the Senate delegation chair, and I guess as the only senator currently here, I just wanted to extend our appreciation to your many years of service. You know, it's tough work working down there, and you've always been one who just put your head to the ground and to really crank through the hard work and really understand the policies, but also have always been there for our community. So just wanted to extend our appreciation to you and your family. It is not easy serving public service, and I think all of us recognize that, but particularly at your level, there's always a lot going on, but you've always been there for us. So just wanted
Thanks,
to spread our appreciation to you.
That's much appreciated for me. And the easy motivation in this line of work is the constituent service, because when you are interacting with the constituents, you're trying to help them. That's what gives you the energy. You all know this because you do it every day as well, but that's what gives you the energy to get up, go to the place where laws are made, go to the place where debates are happening, and make the case on behalf of the people that you represent. So as challenging as it can be at times in Washington, in Congress, if you're there for the right reasons, if you're carrying the portfolio of the concerns of people in your district, and in my case now, it includes all of Howard County, finally after 18 years, that's not a hard thing to do because you're there for the right reason. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. And obviously the collaboration with this delegation is one that I value.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I don't know, it is 9 o'clock. I don't know, Congressman, if you're able to take a couple more questions.
Yeah, I got about 3-4 minutes, so I could do
Okay, great. Delegate Wu, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Congressman, for being here. I just want to say thank you very much for your service and your office, and Victoria Gossier for already being here and helping our constituents. We truly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you so much. I certainly echo the gratitude everyone has expressed for your service. The question I had goes back to Big Pharma. We are one of a tiny minority of countries that allows direct-to-consumer advertising of prescription drugs. I know undoing that would be difficult constitutionally and legally, but is there ever any consideration? I mean, literally half the budget of some of these drugs goes to torturing us with those TV ads. So,
yeah, I mean, look, my general perspective is that the day is coming if we keep pushing hard to rebalance power in this country so that it's priorities of the many, not the money. Let's put it that way. And each step we take in that regard will empower us collectively to take the next step. And frankly, to get to a point where the veil will be taken away from our eyes and we'll realize how dominated we have become by special interests, big money, mega corporations. you know, and I don't say this trying to be some sort of, you know, wild-eyed person here. This is what the average person perceives to be the case. And one of the reasons they get frustrated with their representatives is they can see it plain as day. And they want us to see it plain as day and to go take action to address it. So I believe there will come a day if we keep pushing here and pushing back against those interests, and in the case of Big Pharma, begin to kind of get our arms around this and show that, no, we're not going to let this corporation dominate our constituents when it comes to the cost of drugs and all the rest of it. We're going to push back. Where the next step will be, let's look at this advertising. That can't be right either. But we've got a long way to go on this. The good news is there's a public out there that's already signed up for that battle. They just want to see that we're as committed to it as they are. And if they go to the polls this fall and they cast their vote, in a sense, channeling this desire to push back on big money, special interests, lobbyist influence, and so forth, then we need to take that to heart. And the next step is real action that can corral those interests, not defeat them, not destroy them, because we need the investments they make. We need the businesses they produce. That's what makes the country run in many respects. But to put all that to work for the larger good, for the public good. And I think we can get there. And if we get there, it'll also do great things to restore people's faith in how our democracy functions and operates. And of course, there's a lot of cynicism on that as well. And that's why when we put together that overarching federal reform, it wasn't just about ballot access. We knew people wanted to be able to get to the ballot box without running an obstacle course. And there's critical pieces of the legislation that do that. But it was also to address the influence that big money is having in our politics and the way we govern, because that's the other thing we heard when you listen carefully to the public. They want both things. And because that's about restoring their vote and their voice, making them feel consequential in their own democracy again. And that's what propelled this legislation from the beginning. So I appreciate your question because it allows me to end on the note that I'm most passionate about, which is strengthening our democracy, giving a voice back to everyday Americans and helping them feel empowered. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Congressman. We know you have to run. Want to respect your time and really thank you for the time you've spent with us this morning. And once again, for all your work on behalf of our community and our constituents. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All the best. I'll see you on the trail. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and colleagues, we are joined this morning by some wonderful representatives from the Department of Legislative Services who are going to give us a briefing on state aid to Howard County. And I'm not sure who plans to be up first, so I will just turn it over to you, to whoever wants to take the lead.
Thank you, Chair Feldmark, and good morning, Senator Lamb, Chair Lamb, and members of the Howard County delegation. My name's Arnold Aja. I'm a policy analyst at the Department of Legislative Services. I'm joined by Valerie Monroe and our legislative manager, Hiram Birch, who's going to assist us to answer any questions that you may have. I will now share my screen. We will start on page 1 of the report. So this page shows you that state aid to local governments is a large portion of the total state budget. It is around 1/3 of total general funds and 1/4 of total state funds. In comparison, you can see that entitlements account for around 21% of general funds and 15% of state funds. And state funding for state agencies is around 45% of general funds and 55% of state funds. On page 4 of the report, you will see that Howard County will receive $498.7 million in state aid in fiscal 2025. $421.9 million is direct aid, and $76.8 million is for retirement payments. And total state aid increases by 5.7% over the prior year. You can see that the public school system receives the majority of this funding at $367.1 million. The Howard County Community College receives $34.1 million. The county government will receive $12.9 million, and the library aid totals $1.3 million. Page 6 shows you the dollar difference. Total state aid to Howard County increases by around $27 million in fiscal 2025. And here you can see that the aid to the Howard Community College decreases by $1.3 million. And the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act includes a provision that rebases the CADE funding formula and will reduce statewide funding for community colleges. In Howard County, the projected reduction from this proposed change totals around $1.4 million. We will now go over some of our county and municipal aid programs. Page 12 shows you the existing police aid formula, which will total $5 million for Howard County in fiscal 2025. Page 13 shows you the factors affecting the police aid formula, mainly your population density, which accounts for around 77% of this funding. Page 14 shows you the police aid enhancement funding, which will total around $1 million. And this funding is based on the total number of violent crime offenses occurring within the county. Page 17 shows you the funding trend for the fire and rescue aid. And the county will receive over $622,000 in fire and rescue aid in fiscal 2025. Page 18 shows you that this funding is based on each county's share of property tax accounts relative to the statewide total. Page 19, you will see that Howard County will receive $6.6 million in local health grants, and this is a 10.8% increase over the prior year. And this increase is above the statewide average increase of 6.4%. Page 22 shows you the highway user revenues funding trend, and the county will receive $5.6 million in fiscal 2025. Going back to page 20 details some key points, the funding history of this program, and the distribution through the next fiscal years, as you can see on the table. However, the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act includes provisions that will revert funding back to fiscal year 24 levels, beginning in fiscal 2026. And this would result in a $1.5 million reduction in funding for Howard County in fiscal 26 and 27. I will now pass it over to Valerie, who will present on the education aid.
Thank you, Arnold. If you turn on page 31, you would observe that the vast majority of state funding is targeted to the public school system. Direct state aid to the Howard County public school systems accounts for 73.6% of total state aid provided to the county, and funding for teachers' retirement accounts for 14% of total state aid. In fiscal 25, Howard County public school system will receive $367.1 million indirect aid, which represents a 9.6 million or 2.7% increase from the prior year. In addition, the state will provide 70 million in funding for teacher retirement payments. On a per pupil basis, Howard County will receive 7,819 in state funding. 6,566 is per pupil indirect aid, and 1,253 per pupil for teacher retirement payments. On page 32, you would observe that Howard County will receive a 3.1% increase in per pupil direct aid in fiscal 25. This is close to the statewide average increase of 3.2%. We'll now turn our attention to state education funding under the Blueprint initiatives on page 35. Howard County will receive 7.7 million in state funding under the Blueprint initiatives in fiscal 25. This includes 1.3 million for supplemental instruction, 1.6 million in concentration of poverty grants, 2.4 million for full-day pre-kindergarten, and 1.4 million for college and career programs. On page 36, you would observe that a considerable amount of state education funding is based on targeted student populations, with Howard County receiving 91.6 million in targeted grants under the compensatory aid, English language learners, and special education programs. Of these three programs, Howard County receives 49.5 million in compensatory aid funding, 26.6 million in special education funding, and 15.5 million in English language learners grants. We'll now take a look at student enrollment on page 45. The full-time equivalent student enrollment count decreases by 0.4% in Howard County. In comparison, the statewide average full-time equivalent student enrollment count increases by 0.1%. Currently, the county school system has around 55,900 public school students, which accounts for 6.5% of students statewide. On page 46, this shows the students approved for the free and reduced price meal. The number of students approved for free and reduced price meal decreases by 1.5% in Howard County. Statewide, the free and reduced price meal count increases by 1.3% in fiscal 25. Only 5 school systems had a decrease in their free and reduced price meal count. Howard County currently has a below average percentage of students approved for the free and reduced price meal at 29.3% of total student enrollment. This represents the second lowest of free and reduced price meal students among the 24 local school systems. Statewide, over half of the students are approved for the free and reduced price meal, and this ranges from around 27% in Carroll County to almost 90% in Dorchester County and Baltimore City. On page 47, this shows us the number of students identified as English language learners. Howard County has the 10th highest percentage of students identified as English language learners at 7.2% of total student enrollment. In fiscal 25, the number of students decreases by 1.2%. The only local school system with a reported decrease in the number of English language learner students. The annual percent increase in the number of English language learner students ranges from 2.4% in Somerset County to 26.5% in Washington County, with a statewide average at 6.1%. Regionally, the percent increase in English language learner students ranges from 3.8% in Prince George's County, 4.8% in Montgomery County, 6.7% in Anne Arundel County, 7.9% in Frederick County, and 10.2% in Baltimore County. Let's turn to page 48. Howard County has a below average share of students receiving special education services at 13.1% of total enrollment. This compares to the statewide average of 13.9%. However, the local school system had the second highest increase, the 12.1%, in the number of students receiving special education services. Statewide, the annual increase in the number of special education students averaged 4.6%. If we can look back on page 37 and 38, this shows us the factors affecting targeted education funding. The Targeted Student Index measures the percent share of a school system student enrollment approved for the free and reduced price meal, English language learners, and special education services. While Howard County has a below average targeted student index of 49.6%, a sizable portion of the county's public school system has been identified as needing additional education services to meet academic performance standards. The targeted student index ranges from 42.3% in Carroll County to 117.4% in Baltimore City, with a statewide average at 78.3%. And finally, on page 50, this shows us the public school enrollment as a share of total population. Statewide, public school enrollment represents 13.9% of the total state population. In Howard County, public school enrollment represents 16.7% of the overall county population, and it's actually the highest share in the state. In comparison, Kent County has the lowest share, with public school enrollment accounting for 8.4% of the total county population. Again, I want to say thank you for your time, and I'll now turn it back to Arnold, and he will give you a walkthrough of where you can find some of our important reports on our website. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. So just wanted to show you how you can access our state aid resources. Starting from the Maryland General Assembly webpage, you can click on the Legislative Services tab located on the top right corner. This redirects you to the DLS webpage. And from there, you will click at the Budget tab, followed by the State Aid to Local Governments subtab. Once on the page, you have sort of a big picture of the state aid in fiscal year 2025. Under state aid reports, we provide you 2-year charts by government entity and 2-year charts by program. For example, you can access all of the programs for Howard County. Under session reports, you can access the full state aid overview report, which we just presented on. And then under local fiscal briefing, we prepared a little 4-page summary report that provides the information on the state aid to the county. And under highlighted, in the state aid data downloads allows users to download state aid data on a Excel format. Now I'll briefly want to also show you how you can access some of our policy and local finance reports, and those are actually located in another area of the website. And that's, you would have to click on the policy areas tab, followed by the intergovernmental subtab. And then here, I just want to highlight a few of our reports. We just recently updated our local government overview, and this is a thorough report that provides information on demographic indicators, local government finances, tax rates, and this year we just prepared something on the public school funding. And under our annual reports, we have one that I'd like to highlight is our county revenue outlook. And this sort of provides you information on the revenue attainment from the major tax sources. So again, thank you for your time. And in case you have any questions, we'd be, happy to meet with you and in person, or yeah, and we'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation, and I also really want to thank you for taking the time to sort of walk us through the resources available on the website. I know there is a tremendous wealth of information there, and it's not always the easiest to find if you don't know what exactly you're looking for, but really appreciate that, and appreciate that you all are very helpful and receptive to questions when we do reach out directly. Any questions from members of the delegation at this point on this presentation or any of the other reports mentioned? Okay. Well, seeing none, I will thank you all for your time and all the work you do to support us in our efforts. And with that, Senator Lamb, do you have any closing comments? I'm going to take that as a no. And everyone enjoy a few minutes of time to get a couple things done before we see you on the floor.